Alright guys, in this video we're going to create version 2 of our Easy HTTP library. Okay, so in the first one we used Ajax, XHR, we used callbacks, we used ES5 prototypes. Now what I want to do is up our game a little and use more modern technologies like fetch. I want to use ES6 classes, I want to use promises. Basically, I want it to do the same thing, but just upgrade the technologies to more modern standards. Alright, so I have here just an index.html. We're including a file called easyhttp2.js and app.js, which are both empty. And we have nothing in the body, which is fine. We're just testing everything in the console. So let's go to easyhttp2.js, and in here I'm actually just going to paste in a comment block here, just saying that it's the Easy HTTP library and it's version 2. You can put your own name here if you want. And then we're going to create a class. Okay, so we're using ES6 classes. Now we don't even need a constructor because we don't need the XHR object like we did before where we assigned it to this.http. So let's just go right ahead and put our get in here. So we'll have a get method. We should probably put a comment here. We'll say make an HTTP get request, and this is going to take in a URL. Now I want to use promises, but first I'm going to do it without a promise and just see what happens. We'll try to do this kind of in a synchronous way. So we'll say fetch URL, and then we'll do .then. Okay, fetch itself returns a promise, so we do need to use it here. So we'll say res, and then we need to map it to JSON, and then do another .then, and then we'll do data. Okay, that's going to give us the data, and we can console log it. All right, and then if there's an error, we can catch it. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this. Let's go to app.js, and from here let's initialize a variable. We'll call it HTTP and set it to new easy HTTP, and let's go ahead and get users. Now we're going to be using JSON placeholder again, but instead of using posts we're going to use the users, okay, which you can see right here. Alright, and I already have the server running. I already have live server running in the browser. So let's go ahead and just call http.get and then pass in this URL to get these users. Alright, so we'll save that, and if we look down here in the console, it's logging out the 10 users. Alright, so that's logging out from right here. Now, if we were to do this in a synchronous way and try to do const users equals that, and then console.log users, and then in the library, instead of console logging the data, return the data. Actually, we don't need to do that. We can just say data. Same thing with the error. And save, we get undefined. So what we want to do here is we want to wrap this whole fetch in a promise. Alright, so this get should actually, that should be right there. And then I'm going to go right under the get and say return new promise. Now inside here we could put a function like that, but I'm going to use an arrow function instead. So just parentheses and then an arrow and then the brackets. Okay, and a promise takes in resolve and reject. Okay, so we call resolve when we actually want to send a response, and then reject if we want to send an error. So now let's take this whole fetch right here and cut it and put it inside of the return new promise. And then right here, instead of just returning data, we want to call resolve and pass in data like that, and then reject for the error. All right, and that's it. So let's save it. Now, if you look down here, what this is, if we set users to this get, it just returns a promise. Okay, we want the data from the promise, the response. So we don't do it this way. We do it in an asynchronous way by calling http.get and then .then. So we'll do .then and we'll do .catch if there's an error. Okay, and then in here we're going to get the data, and we'll console.log data, and then here we'll console.log the error. So let's go ahead and save that. Okay, let's see, I'm missing a parentheses here, and there we go. So now we're actually fetching the users from the API. Alright, so you can see that this is actually much cleaner than how we did it before. Alright, so now let's do our post. So I'm going to go ahead and go under the get. Whoops. Let's say make an HTTP post request, and we'll just go ahead and copy the get. It's going to be pretty similar. So we'll say post. Now, post is going to have to take in data, so we'll pass that in. And we're still going to do the return new promise. We're going to wrap the fetch. Now, when we make a post request, we have to add in an object here with some stuff. So we want to say method post. We also need, in our headers, the content type. Okay, so we'll say content-type. And we're going to set that to application/JSON. Okay, and then we need to send the body. So we'll say body, and we're going to send the data that's passed in, but we need to wrap it in JSON.stringify. Just like that. And then this stuff will all be the same. We'll get the JSON, we'll resolve the data. If there's an error, we'll call reject with the error. So let's go ahead and save that. Let's go back to app.js. We'll comment this out. And let's say, actually, first of all, let's create the data. We'll say user data. And let's say const. Now, if we look at the data here, I'm just going to do a name, username, and email. So username, I'll just say John Doe. Email. Okay, so there's our data. Let's create a post. So it's going to be very similar to this. I'm just going to copy this. And we're just going to say http.post, and we're going to pass in as a second parameter the data. All right, and we'll see what we get back. So let's go over here. Let's go ahead and save. And you can see we get back name John Doe, username John Doe, email, and then ID is 11. Okay, and if you recall, when we did the GET request, the last ID was 10, so the next one is going to be 11, and that's what we're getting back. So we made a successful post request. All right, so now we're going to do a put or an update. Okay, so this is going to be pretty similar to post, so I'm going to copy that, and we're just going to change this to put. Oops. And that's going to take in, oops, what did I do wrong here? Something happened with the semicolon. Oh, I'm not inside the class. All right, so grab this. Okay, we'll change this to put. and it's going to take in URL and data. We're just going to change the method to put, and then everything else is pretty much the same. We're sending the data here, stringifying it. So let's save. Let's go back to here and let's copy this. And we'll say update post. Change it to http.put. And then we want to update, let's say user/2, pass in the data, get the response back, and you can see that now ID2 has the updated user data, which is this right here. So pretty easy. So now let's do the delete. Just within the class. So let's see, we'll just copy the put, and we'll change that to delete. Okay, now the delete is not going to need data, it just needs the URL. I'm going to change the method to delete, and we're going to get rid of the body because we're not actually sending data. All right, now for the resolve, I'm not going to send back data because it's just going to be an empty object. So what I'm going to do is just send back a string that says resource deleted. So let's save that. Let's go back to our file here, copy this, comment it out. Oops, I'm saying post. These should be users. Create user. All right, so we'll paste that in. Let's do HTTP delete. Okay, now we don't need the data here as a second parameter. We'll remove that, and let's say we're going to delete 2, and we'll go ahead and save that and run it, and we get resource deleted. All right, and actually in our delete method here, we don't need this data. This can just be an empty set of curly braces. All right, so we'll save that, and that should still work. All right, guys, so we have created version 2 of Easy HTTP using fetch, using promises, using arrow functions. So in the next video, what I want to do is talk a little bit about the new ES7 feature, async await, and then we're going to move on and create version 3 of this, where we, instead of using return new promise, we're going to use async functions with await.